Hi, a couple of years ago, I made a video, an installation video. Here it is. It's on the course website. That's installation video. You'll now find this video next to this new video that you're watching now. So just a few things have been updated since that installation video, and I'd like to touch base on them. So this is all about installing Julia, specifically useful for your course UQ Math 2504, but it's good for installing Julia in general. So if I go and I do Google download Julia and go to the download Julia webpage, uh, now there is a different way that the Julia community is suggesting to install Julia. So it's by running this command in your terminal. Now they're saying it looks like you're using a Unix type system. If you're using a Windows system, click here. If you would be on a Windows system, most likely you'd see the Windows command, and that would be this. So you need to run this on a terminal or in Windows in the command prompt. Let me show you how to do it on Mac, and we'll also speak about it a bit. So first of all, terminal, I'm going to run the terminal. So I'll run the terminal. Okay. And what they want me to do is to copy this command. I can select it and copy it, or I can just hit copy and it's copied into my copy buffer, and then I'm pasting it in the terminal. So here it is. Now, before we run it, I just want to say a bit of a word of caution. So any command that you find anywhere on the internet to be pasted in your terminal is a bit of a scary thing. It's a bit of it's an immediate vulnerability. You're immediately putting your system at risk. Now here I know that I'm going to juliaup.org. That's a trusted domain. I'm going to the downloads page. But please be careful. Don't go, for example, to Julia Lang with another extra character or something like that, and then have some malicious command that would do something else. In this specific case, the curl command, first of all, with a few flags, actually takes a script, takes a text script, a bash script in this case, from this location, from this URL. And then this thing, you'll learn about it in the course. It pipes that script into the shell, and then the shell starts executing the script. Let me just show you. If I'll just do curl without the last bit, and I hit enter, and I'm going to see all this long script, which is a series of shell commands, are going to be run locally. Now, we could have had some malicious commands there that would do something malicious to the computer, but in this case, I'm just trusting julialang.org. So I'll clear my terminal and again, paste the whole thing. Oh, like this, piped into the shell. And once I hit enter, it is telling me it's downloading the installer. Welcome to Julia. This will download and install the official Julia language distribution. Let me make the whole screen a bit bigger. And its version manager, juliaup. So when we last made the video, there was not really an application called juliaup, and now there is this application. Juliaup is an application that allows you to have multiple Julia versions on your computer. For the Math 2504 course, this is probably not important, but if you're using Julia more seriously or professionally, it's good to use Juliaup, and that now comes as part of the installation per se. And that allows you to have multiple types of Julia versions. For example, if a new one comes out and you want to have both that and the older version, then you have both. Okay. So it's telling us it's going to put it in this directory. This is my username. It's going to put it in this location. The path will then be added to the path. It says proceed with installation. I'm going to hit enter, and it is installing now Juliaup. So it detected that my computer is a Mac in this case, and it's not a M1, M2, M3 Mac, so it's an Apple Darwin 14, and it's done that. Now it says, depending on which shell you're using, run one of the following commands to reload the path environment variable. So I'm going to copy this thing and run it. And at this point, I believe that if I write Julia, then Julia was found in my path. Well, this is actually running juliaup, which is now going to run the latest version of, the selected version of Julia. The first time running is a bit slower. And here it goes. We have Julia 1.110. Sorry, 1.10.4. Okay, that's the Julia we have. And from this point on, the other bits that were described in the video for installation, such as installing, in this video here, in the installation video, such as installing iJulia for Jupyter, and there was also working a bit with Git and installing Visual Studio Code, these things still hold, but the installation here was different. Now, when you actually, I'm going to now quit the terminal. If I now want to run Julia from scratch, the way to do it is to run the terminal. Now, notice that on my Mac, I like to have the terminal down here. So I'm just going to click terminal. Again, make the text a bit bigger. Okay. And now I am going to run Julia. 1 + 1 is 2. Great, Julia works. Now let's just, for the sake of it, still continue with installing iJulia since you're watching this video, but that's also in the other video. So I'll hit the right square bracket. Yeah, I hit this key, this right square bracket, this guy, right square bracket. So I hit the right square bracket. This put me in package manager mode. I believe that if I'll first of all, if I do help now, I'll see the package manager commands. There are a bunch of them. I'm just going to do the status, or for short, the ST command, and that will show me what packages are installed. So now, since I reinstalled Julia on an empty machine, there are no packages installed. It downloaded a registry, which is kind of an information of all of the possible packages available in Julia. I downloaded that from Julia, but I have no packages. So I want to install one important package, which is called iJulia, and that package runs Jupyter. So for this, in the package manager mode, so again, right square bracket. To get out of it, I hit backspace, but right square bracket. I'll write add iJulia. Now, I'm going to do this, and I purposely made a mistake with a case. This thing is not going to work because things in Julia and in most programming environments are case sensitive. And there's no just package iJulia. It says error. The following package names cannot be resolved. iJulia not found. But it's actually telling us, oh, there's some similar names. And indeed, the one we want is this, capital I, capital J, Julia. So add iJulia. There we are. We're adding iJulia. And at this point, the system is installing the package, which allows us to run Jupyter. And it's doing some progress. I don't think it's going to take too long, so we'll stay on this video as we look at it. Okay. But in the meanwhile, just while this is happening, I'll open a new window. Okay, in the terminal. This window just looks different because it's a different color. And I just want to look at the juliaup command, which was also installed. So let's write juliaup. You see, you have juliaup after I installed this script, which installed juliaup and Julia. So juliaup, you don't really need to use this too much, but since the package manager is running, let's see what's happening here. So if I just ran juliaup, it actually gave me all of the help for the juliaup command, the juliaup terminal command. The juliaup is like a terminal app, okay? And it shows you can do juliaup and command. So let's do Julia, and shows me all kinds of commands I see. In this case, juliaup status is all installed Julia versions. So let's do juliaup status. And it shows me I have one installed Julia version. Now, I do know that in previous years, some have accidentally, when you could choose which Julia version to install, have installed a 32-bit version on a 64-bit machine. All of you should have at this point 64-bit machines. So if you, well, that was for Windows, right? So if you see here in a 32 and you're running on Windows, then you're probably with the wrong version, but you won't have that anyway. Anyway, that was juliaup. Let's close this terminal. And now if I'm back in the package manager. If I do status, you see I have one package, iJulia. Okay, I can add other packages just for the sake of it. So let's add, for example, add progress meter. Okay, now I hit tab, and that's common in most programming environments. And here, once I did add progress and I hit tab, well, I actually had to hit tab twice, and it showed me all of the possible options. And if I do just hit tab once, and the auto completion is obvious what to autocomplete, it's going to autocompleted to progress meter. So it's installing another small package. This is just a package for progress meters. So if I do status, see, I have iJulia and I have progress meter, each for their versions. You'll deal more with the package manager, but most important is we now needed to do it for running Jupyter. So I hit out of the package manager backspace or delete, and that's why I went back to a Julia prompt. And now to run Jupyter, what I need to do is to run the command, the function notebook. But this is not going to work. It's not going to work because notebook, even though the package is installed, this Julia session still doesn't know the notebook exists. So I'm going to run notebook. It's not going to work. But if I do using iJulia, I'm now telling the Julia session, please use the iJulia package. All of the commands from the iJulia package, please put here. And if I now do notebook, and I'm even going to autocomplete, open, close, round brackets, because it is the Julia function that I'm calling, it is running the notebook. Now, this is the first time I'm running the iJulia notebook. So it's asking me, do you want to install Jupyter via Conda? Conda is actually a Python installation, and that is one way to install Jupyter on this machine. And I'm going to put yes. And now it's going to do some things for another little while. It's going to install mini Conda on my computer, and that is only for the first time for running iJulia. In the meanwhile, while this is happening, let's open another new window. Okay, here's another window. And let's run Julia in this window. Okay, now when you run Julia, you see which version of Julia you're running. And it's the only version installed on this computer, so it's obvious it's this version that we're running. Okay, let's just also see the version info function, and that's available. You don't need to include or do using or anything like that. That's just a version info function. That's a good thing to see. Let's say if you didn't see this splash screen that starts when you start Julia, then you see you're running version 1.10.4, and there's some more information here. It's telling me information here about my computer, etc., etc. Okay, this guy's still working on the left, so let's just do a few more things. How do we go to the package manager? Well, we use the right square bracket, right? I'm hitting the right square bracket. This, by the way, is called the Julia REPL. Read, evaluate, print. That's the Julia REPL. Okay, so right square bracket, status. I've got 2 packages installed. We know that, right? I won't run Jupyter from here, but I can do something else, such as, for example, println hello world, and that has called the function println, print line. In Python, if you've ever done Python, it's just print, but here it's println because it's a print plus a character return plus a new line, and it printed the string hello world. Okay, that's what's happening here. It's still installing my Miniconda, and it will take the same amount of time or similar on your computer, I believe. Maybe if it's a slightly faster, newer Mac, it'll be quicker. Now, let's also deviate for a second for Windows users. Again, what you would do is you would get this, and you would run it not in a terminal, but on a Windows, you have what's called a command prompt. But also in the course, we're suggesting that you use git bash, and then you don't often use a command prompt. You'll use Mac Unix style commands. Now, at this point, this guy is already done. It's done with the installation. And the way Jupyter works is Julia runs in this terminal, and it's actually spawning a local server for a web page. So that's at the location localhost with port 8891. And this is what Jupyter looks like. And at this point, I can go and I can create a new notebook. And the new notebook, I'm going to use Julia 1.10. Now, my computer knows that there's all kinds of other Julia versions in there. It's somewhere in some Jupyter file that was not deleted when I deleted things for this video. But you just choose the latest Julia for that, or the one that you have. And again, 1 + 1. Let's run that. Shift Enter, 2. Okay, so let's leave this, and we just worked on a file that was called untitled. Let's delete it. Let's close this and go back here and hit Control C And that command, which we ran in the Julia REPL, which was notebook, and did all this installation, it was all the way up here. So now it is done with its execution. So just to see how we do the whole thing, let me actually finish and restart again and now run Jupyter afresh. Okay, so I'm going to hit, well, I can do two things. I can do Control D, or I can call the exit function. It's not exit like that, because then it just tells me, hey, there is exit. It's basically a function with two methods. You'll understand what that is. It's calling the exit function. But instead, and that would have done the same thing that I'm going to do now, which is hitting Control D. Yeah, so Control D, D for dog, stops Julia. By the way, if I do Control D again here in the shell, it stops the shell. I log out of the shell. A shell is like the terminal. Okay, let me even close my terminal, quit terminal. It's going to terminate this guy as well. And let's try to now, I've done the installation. I'm now going to run Jupyter on my computer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run a terminal. And I'm going to run Julia, which is in my path, so it can run Julia. I'm going to do using iJulia. And I'm going to run notebook. And now it will be quick. The notebook function is writing all this stuff for us and immediately spawning the web page and opening it in the default browser. And here we have Jupyter working for us. Okay, and then you can work with Jupyter. That's it. Now, I'm a little secret, so Control C and Control D. And look, if I do now Control C, Control D, I still have Jupyter running here. But if I'm going to refresh the page on Chrome, it's, for example, on Mac Command R, whoop, it can't find localhost 8891/3 because nothing is serving it. Okay, so even though you saw it, if you refreshed it, nothing is there. Okay, just one little thing I have on a computer. By the way, Control L clears the terminal. Okay, if I do iJulia, that's just on my computer. Look what I get. Running iJulia on current directory. And I immediately get Jupyter. Now, this is a little trick I did for myself years ago, and that works. And you can try to do such a thing as well. You can do it both on Windows and on Mac. So I don't want to get into the, again, I did this, I run iJulia instead of running Julia and using iJulia and running the notebook command. Now here I didn't want to hit enter, so I put a semicolon, right? But this is the other way of running Jupyter that I've just shown you. Okay, so what is this iJulia thing? Well, that's something I just created. If I go for the terminal command, which iJulia, which just takes some, a path and says, which one are you going to use or run? It says, oh, it's something in the location user local bin iJulia. So let's see what's there. I'll use the cat command. You'll get this in Unit 4, where Paul Billette will show you a few Unix commands, and you'll play with a few. So cat user local bin iJulia. And what you see is there is a file, cat just prints out a text file to the terminal. This is a very small script, which simply has echo print to the screen running iJulia on current directory. And then it actually runs the Julia command with the -e flag. So what is the -e flag? Well, -e, we'll see in a second, we'll read it. It takes whatever comes afterwards and runs it as the first Julia command in Julia. Let's actually do Julia -- help. This is all of the flags that you can give to Julia. And with Julia -- help, we see -e evaluate, so evaluate expression. So I see that if, for example, I do Julia -e or -e, println 2, it's running Julia, and it evaluated the Julia command println 2, right? Or I could have done println the square root of 2, another close bracket. It told me the square root of 2. Okay, now this is not so useful per se, but it's useful when you have a shell script like this, where you actually want to shortcut a thing or two. So what is this thing that I'm shortcutting? I'm shortcutting using iJulia, semicolon, notebook. Now, when I run the notebook, I don't just run it with open round bracket, close round bracket. I also give it a keyword argument, which says the current directory you're going to use is your current directory. And that's something that's not as important. But let's just now, let's again just do this ourselves. So if I do Julia-E using iJulia, semicolon, notebook, and I'm not going to give this argument to the notebook. And when I'm not doing it, then the root of the notebook, what you see here is going to be the whole file system. So let's do that. And this is a one-liner that runs Jupyter. Okay, so remember this one-liner, Julia minus E, remember, write it or use it, or make yourself a shell script, or just start Jupyter in any way you want. Okay, so I hope that all this rambling on was way more than needed for installing Julia. We saw it on a Mac. You can also follow up on this 2021 video, which shows you a few more things related to this installation. Okay, hope you enjoyed the course. Come to consultation hours or support practicals if you cannot, if you're having trouble installing. Also practical, so on the first week, certainly want everything installed and working. Thank you, and bye.